Everybody, thank you for joining me. So, today is the 10-year anniversary of the Knicks making not just the trade, but actually the 10-year anniversary of Carmelo Anthony's Knicks debut. And it was an amazing time when that happened. And the Knicks now, at the time, had just gone 6 straight seasons of not making the playoffs. And that was just the longest stretch of years of not making the playoffs since the late 1950s, early 1960s. And Knicks fans were starved for some good basketball. And just a decade before, the Knicks had come off of a run in the 90s where they were a very good basketball team, competitive, and even though they fell short of winning a championship, they had in the 90s not only made the playoffs every year, but they won at least one round in the playoffs for 9 straight seasons. And then come the 2000s, the Patrick Ewing era is over, and they went through a lot of down years. And I was talking with you all a couple days ago and talking about the February of 2010 when the Knicks made a trade for Tracy McGrady, and that trade was not made really for McGrady to come and be a savior. It was made for salary cap space where that summer the Knicks would have all this money to go out there and pursue two big name free agents, but really it was LeBron James. It was the summer of LeBron, and the Knicks had really 2 years prior, leading up to 2010, for 2 seasons, the Knicks got rid of their best players because even though they had talent, they were not winning. So they sacrificed 2 years, really not trying their best to win because they were trying to get money off the books. So in the summer of 2010, July 2010, they could make a run at LeBron James, who, if he had come to New York, could have been the king of New York and all that. We know LeBron did not end up signing with the Knicks. He signed with Miami in that summer of 2010. And the Knicks, with all their cap space, they signed Amari Stoudemire. That was the big name that they signed. And they signed little smaller pieces with some of that other cap space, guys like Raymond Felton. He was a solid point guard they brought in. And that season, the 2010-2011 season, the Knicks began that with Amari as their centerpiece, and he had young guys like Landry Fields, who was a second round draft pick. He was a rookie that year. They had Danilo Gallinari, who they had drafted in the first round about 2.5 years prior. Uh, Felton, Amari, yeah, Fields, Gallinari, and solid role players. And they started off that season, and even like I said, before that year, the Knicks had players come through like Stephon Marbury, Jamal Crawford, Steve Francis, Nate Robinson, David Lee, Zach Randolph, Quentin Richardson. All these guys today, if you hear any basketball fan name any of them, they will say, oh, all those guys were really good NBA players. They all had solid careers, and all those guys get a lot of respect. And their head coach was, and general manager was Isaiah Thomas, someone who, if you're a basketball fan, you know Isaiah Thomas is one of the greatest players of all time. And he was a warrior out there on the court, a little general, and he was as tough as they come. He was the point guard of those Pistons teams. He was a leader and respected, and we all know that he knows basketball. And if you even hear Isaiah Thomas talk now, Isaiah Thomas is not hard to find. He's on NBA TV all the time. He is so knowledgeable about the game of basketball, and he if you hear Isaiah Thomas talk, you know clearly that he knows not only what he's talking about as it pertains to basketball, but in life, period. He's a very smart man. And so that was the guy who was leading the Knicks, but it did not work. As a unit, the Knicks could not win games, and so we saw so many talented players come to the Knicks, come to the Garden, and crumble under the pressure that is playing at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, and the New York Knicks. So Amari comes in now, 2010-2011 season, 6 straight years prior to that of not making the playoffs, and the Knicks start that season off 3-7. Right? They have a home game at Game 10. They have a home game against Houston, and they lose that game. So they start off 3 wins, 7 losses, and I go into the Knicks locker room. Now, I was there for the whole Carmelo Anthony era. I was in the building at the Garden for every home game, his whole 7 years on the Knicks, okay? Really, 6.5 years he was on the Knicks. I was in the building for every game. So that his first year before he got there, the Knicks start off 3-7. I go into the Knicks locker room, and Amari Stoudemire, the Knicks' big free agent addition that summer, he's in the locker room now. Amari had been with Phoenix, right? And the Phoenix Suns were a very good team with Amari. Amari was a perennial all-star. He was a big-time player. And so I saw, like I said, so many talented players before Amari came in. Zach Randolph, Marbury, Jamal Crawford, Steve Francis, David Lee, Nate Robinson. All these guys are highly respected. I saw so many guys come to the Knicks and so many talented players and get sucked up by the losing that was the Knicks. I mean, these guys would come in and for whatever reason on the court, they could not function as a unit and win basketball games. I saw so many guys come in and get sucked up by the losing culture, because when you're losing every season, it's becomes the culture of losing, and the media's on you, media pressure, the fans are on you, they want you to win, and it's a lot of pressure. And I saw so many guys come in and crack, and they could not lift the Knicks anywhere, right? So here comes Amari. He is coming from Phoenix, where they are a very good team, and they start off 3-7. I go into the Knicks locker room, and Amari is sitting there, and all these reporters around him, he's talking to everybody, and Amari is just saying that he is not a loser. And he said, I don't care, I'm not a loser, and this is not acceptable, right? They're 3-7. So it's looking like it's about to be the same old with the Knicks. Another losing season, and here we go again. Then they go on the road. Their 11th game, they go and play Denver, which is Carmelo Anthony's team. And Denver and Carmelo beat the Knicks. The Knicks then fall to 3-8, right, against Carmelo and Denver. And then at that point right there, things change. The Knicks end up going on a big run where they won 13 of their next 14 games. And Amari led them, carried them, and he started scoring 30 points in every game, playing like a monster, playing like an MVP. And then next thing you know, they go from 3-8 to winning 13 of their next 14 games, and then the record is 14-9, right? And that 13th of 14th game, that 13th win that they had, the Knicks played against Carmelo in Denver at the Garden on December 12, 2010. And now at this time, all during that all season and early in that season, there were rumors that Carmelo Anthony wanted to get traded to the Knicks, right? Like once LeBron James passed the Knicks up, Carmelo Anthony let it be known that he wanted to play for the Knicks, okay? And LeBron and Carmelo remind everybody that they both came into the league together the same year, 2003 NBA draft. And when they came in, Carmelo was somebody who played 1 year in college at Syracuse. He won a championship in that 1 year. And LeBron came out of high school. And so there was a whole big thing, who should be picked first, Carmelo or LeBron. And they were always going to be compared. Carmelo ends up getting picked third. LeBron goes first. Carmelo goes to Denver on the West Coast. LeBron gets picked by Cleveland, and so everybody is building it up now. It's going to be the new Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson, LeBron on the East, Carmelo on the West, and they're going to have a great battle during their career, and they'll meet in the finals, East Coast, West Coast. Of course, that never happened. But now, Carmelo in 2010, now this is his 8th year, and LeBron passes the Knicks up, and Carmelo says, I want to be a Knick, I want to play in New York. So on December 12, 2010, when the Knicks now, for the first time in 7 years, are above 500 pretty much this late in the season, and they are, Amari has lifted them out of the basement, out of this losing culture, and we've seen so many guys come and fail, but behind Amari's leadership and on his back, he lifts them to, they're now 5 games over 500, and they're playing Denver and Carmelo, and by this point, there's rumors are running rampant. Everybody knows that Carmelo wants to be a Knick, and it's pretty much only a matter of time. And so that was a big game, and that was on a Sunday, and that week was built up as a big week because after they played Carmelo in Denver, they had a game against Miami. Not Miami. The next game was against Boston, who had made the NBA Finals the previous year. The Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Boston Celtics, and that was a big game where the Knicks now were playing them, and that was a big test for the Knicks. And then the next game after that, they played against LeBron and the Heat on a Friday night. So they come home, right, having won 12 or 13 games. They're playing Carmelo in Denver. They win that game to go 13, win 13 of 14 games, and they had this, this big week set up at home. Carmelo in Denver, Boston, and then LeBron and the Heat. And it was a very exciting time. Knicks were finally good, and Carmelo's here. And of course, seeing the Knicks, you know that with just Amari and a bunch of role players, they could only go so far. They're not going to win a championship. They're not beating LeBron and the Heat with just Amari Stoudemire and a bunch of role players, okay? Because the Heat of that time had LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, a serious big three. So Knicks fans know they need to get somebody else. Carmelo wants to come. Let's make it happen. So Carmelo comes into the building now. I'm going to play a report really quickly that I did on December 12, 2010. Carmelo, as a Nugget, comes into the Garden to play the Knicks with trade rumors running rampant. And first, going to play this, then going to go into Carmelo getting traded here and Carmelo's Knick debut 10 years ago tonight, okay? The amazing streak continues with Carmelo in the building. The New York Knicks continued their incredible streak on Sunday afternoon with their 8th straight win and a 129-128 win over the Denver Nuggets at Madison Square Garden. The win was the Knicks' 13th in their last 14 games, and after beginning the season with a record of 3-8, they are now 16-9. The storyline of Sunday's game centered around Denver All-Star forward Carmelo Anthony, who many believe will be a Knick by this time next season. Anthony, in his 8th NBA season, is in the final year of his contract with Denver and has let it be known that he would like to play in New York. Carmelo scored 31 points in the game to go along with 13 rebounds, while Knicks forward Amari Stoudemire finished the game with 30 points. Stoudemire has now scored 30 or more points in every game the Knicks have won during this 8-game win streak, and Carmelo is very impressed.
I think, right now he's on a hot streak. He's on a roll. He's getting it in different, styles out there. He's getting it at the elbow. He's getting it at the block. His jump shot is falling right now. So he has a nice rhythm going right now. But I didn't see him, for a long time playing, like this. I'm happy for him. I'm happy he came here. I'm happy he's playing at the level that he's playing at right now.
The last time the Knicks saw Denver earlier in the season before Sunday, the Knicks left Denver with a record of 3 wins and 8 losses. After Sunday's game, the Knicks now have a record of 16 wins and 9 losses.
When we played them in Denver the first time, they look like a totally different team right now. They got a lot of rhythm going out there. it seemed like everybody's on the same page. Everybody's, doing their part out there. And they rolling right now.
Carmelo says he received much love during his brief 2-day stay in the Big Apple.
Everybody's, yelling out the windows and just, Melo, we need you in New York, that talk. Of course that feels good when you know somebody out there wants you to come and, represent that team, represent their city. So that's what I took from it.
Now, the man who will have the responsibility of trading Anthony or not is Denver General Manager Masai Ujiri.
The situation is what it is, and we continue to talk and assess the situation, and we'll deal with it as it comes.
And Ujiri, who was born in Nigeria, is the first African-born general manager in the NBA.
You feel honored and blessed and humbled, and I certainly thank my organization and owners, the Crown Keys, for the opportunity. And yes, I'm representing a great continent, and I think it's my duty to represent them well.
And we will give you more on the story of Denver Nuggets general manager Masai Ujiri in the coming days. Now, also yesterday, we spoke with former New York Knick and first-year Denver Nugget forward Al Harrington. Harrington played for the Knicks for the past 2 seasons, and Harrington told us his thoughts on his former team's play.
I think they're doing a great job, you know what I'm saying? It's really starting to come together for them, and I'm happy for them. Like I said, I'm always at the bottom of my heart, I'm a Knick fan, and I'm just happy to see the team doing well.
All right, man, so I know last year, that to me you had an incredible season. I love your game. You can really do it all out there, and you lit it up last year on a number of occasions, and so I know you wanted to come back. Just how did that whole process work out over the summer where you wanted to come back, you ended up not being able to, ending up in Denver?
Yeah, it was, the process, it wasn't that bad, but, I kind of knew early that, where the team stood, once they, traded David Lee and everything. So it was at that point I knew I had to move on. So it is what it is. In the past, I was just grateful to play for the Knicks for 2 years, and, no chapter in my life is done.
All right, man, I had to ask you about, the Carmelo Anthony situation. This team, he's been here for a while. It's 8th year on the team, and I know you guys have a team that had, guys are a contender to make it to the Western Conference Finals and all that. And so I know you guys want to do that. So just, but when training camp first started, there was a lot of speculation that he was going to get traded and all that. So just, what's it been like just in the locker room and just with that whole thing going down?
Honestly, we don't even think about it, man. The good thing about Melo is that even with the distraction, he don't let it affect him at all the way he deal with us. So I think as long as he not, acting funny or doing anything like that, it's easy for us just to, go as business usual.
So you played in New York, right? So just seeing his personality and just seeing the kind of game he has and all that, just how do you think he would be able to handle it on this stage in New York, spotlight all the media and all that?
I honestly don't want to think about that, man. I just hope he's, stay with this team so we keep winning.
And then we spoke with Carmelo Anthony's longtime Denver teammate, guard J.R. Smith. Smith says he has loved his time playing with Carmelo.
It's been fun being on the same team as Melo. He's made people better, not only on the court but off the court. I think he's matured to a great young man. You can't wait to see what the rest of his career looks like.
Is it tough at all to play when you're turn on the TV and you hear people talking about your team and what might happen, and it's too much speculation?
Nah, that's pretty much been the team MO since I've been here, working. Getting guys in and out and working on, different things during this summertime in the season. So, it's just part of the game.
Right. So just for you as a basketball player, when you come to New York and play at Madison Square Garden, is there any special feelings playing in the Garden?
Definitely. It's the most historic building, in the world, in my opinion. I grew up in Jersey, so unfortunately I didn't grow up a Knicks fan. I grew up a Bulls fan, but I always wanted to play at the Garden.
You grew up in Jersey, you grew up a Bulls fan, and so the Knicks, Knicks in the 90s, they were always in the playoffs, always had the city buzzing, In the last 10 years, they haven't been doing anything, no playoff games, just losses, and now you look up, and they're 14-9 right now, they're playing really good. You got Amari Stoudemire, and everything's coming together for them at the moment. So what do you think about what they're doing?
I think they're doing great. It's seven-game win streak, and it's first time in a long time. I'm sure a lot of people are glad to see it and want to see it. So, I'm happy for them. I'm just waiting just waiting to get out there with the new team again.
All right, so that was J.R. Smith, and it's interesting because at that time he was with Denver as a teammate of Carmelo Anthony, and we all know that a year and a half later, well, 2 years later, he ended up, well, really, the next season, about a year and a half later, he ended up becoming a Knick himself and playing again with Carmelo. And so JR, at that time, he, someone who, he, from New Jersey, grew up a Bulls fan. His parents are big Knick fans, and they would always be there when he became a Knick. So you saw them very visible. But before I played the report, I said the Knicks after this game were 14-9. They actually were 16-9. So they started off 3-8 and then won 13 of 14 games, and they were 16-9. So for them, for a team that had not made the playoffs in 6 straight years, that was huge for them to be 16-9. And Amari Stoudemire, he in that Denver game had scored going into that game, he had scored 30 or more points in 7 straight games. That game against Denver, he scored his 30 points or more for an 8th straight game. And then the next game, they played against Boston, and that was a huge game, right? Because Boston had just made the NBA Finals, lost to the Lakers and Kobe Bryant in 7 games, and now here are the Knicks. It's a big test for them on a 9-game winning streak, and they either 9 or 8-game winning streak or 9-game winning streak, one of the two, going into the Boston game. And they played Boston in a great game. That was one of the best Knicks games I've ever been at. It was electric, huge game. Knicks had a chance to prove themselves for the first time in a while, and they gave Boston everything they could handle. Lost to Boston at the end on a Paul Pierce buzzer beater. Actually, Paul Pierce made a jump shot with a few seconds left, and then Amari got the ball at the end, final seconds, took a shot from deep, from straight away. Amari makes the shot, but the shot comes after the buzzer, so it was no good. Boston wins the game. And then the next game on a Friday night is the first game that LeBron comes to the Garden as a Miami Heat since deciding to not come to the Knicks. And of course, that night was a ridiculous atmosphere, one of those games where you go into the building, go into the Garden, and everybody is just buzzing. It's buzzing, and the Heat and LeBron come in there, and LeBron, the great LeBron, showing his greatness. He had a great game, beat the Knicks, so, you knew that the Knicks had still a ways to go. Amari Stoudemire, though, he was getting MVP chance. He was playing out of his mind. And I knew that Amari was a really good player before he came to the Knicks, all his time in Phoenix. But with the Knicks, he really took his game to even a higher level. And he was better than what I even thought he was, right? And it's funny because when they started off 3-8, I was not so sure about him. And don't forget, the Knicks before that season, they had David Lee, who they had drafted, and he had been with the Knicks for his first 5 years. And David Lee's last season, the year prior to Amari coming, David Lee averaged 20 points and 10 rebounds, which in the NBA, if you average 20 and 10, you are playing at an elite level. And I, at the time, did not want the Knicks to let go of David Lee for Amari Stoudemire. But the Knicks did, right? Because now Knicks had all this money in the summertime, and the fans were expecting LeBron James, and that did not happen. And if LeBron's not coming, Knicks fans at least wanted to see some big-time free agent come. So the organization was not going to keep David Lee around. They sent him out, signed Amari, and but I was skeptical. And when they started off 3-8, I was like, okay, Amari isn't all that. And then, like I said, after they started off with that 3-8 record, Amari was in the locker room telling the reporters, telling all of us in the media that he was not a loser. And after that, they go on this run where they win 13 or 14 games, and then now here they are, 16-9. So then the season goes on, and we get to 2 months down the line, and there's all the speculation leading up to the trade deadline that the Knicks are trying to get Carmelo. But now there's this whole thing because Carmelo is a free agent after the season. And so people are saying, okay, should the Knicks hold on and wait until the summer to sign Amari as a free agent instead of making a trade? Because if you make a trade, you've got to trade away some of your players, right? And draft picks to get Carmelo. So there was a debate whether or not the Knicks should trade for Carmelo right then and there during the season or wait until the season ends. But of course, there was a risk in waiting because after that season, the NBA's collective bargaining agreement was expiring and it was going to be renegotiated. So no one knew what was going to be the new collective bargaining agreement, what the terms were going to be, what players' contracts were going to look like, what they would be able to do. And Carmelo made it be known that he wanted to get traded to the Knicks before the season ended because he wanted to sign a new contract and he did not want to have to wait until after the season with, all this doubt in the air about how his new contract would look, if the Knicks would still be able to trade for him. And let's not forget, after that season, there was a lockout in the NBA. So there was a big labor dispute with the owners and the players. The owners locked out the players. The next season did not begin on time, and it was a shortened season because there was a lockout. So there was a big labor dispute. So Carmelo wanted to get traded to the Knicks right then and there that season before the trade deadline. And the Knicks started, they got off to that solid start, but there was a lot of speculation. There were Knicks players who were in trade rumors regarding Carmelo, and because of that, the Knicks play started to slip. There were guys who were not able to focus because they were hearing their names in these trades, and they think that, okay, I may be traded away, and they start to go on this losing streak and all that. And I remember Kobe Bryant and the Lakers coming into the Garden to face the Knicks shortly before the trade deadline, and it was a big ESPN game on a Friday night, and Kobe was being asked, and also at that time now, the Lakers were trying to trade for Carmelo too, okay? So, and also the Nets were trying to as well. The Nets at that time were not in Brooklyn yet. They were still in New Jersey, and they were a bad team at the time, but they were going to be moving to Brooklyn in a year and a half, and Carmelo was born in Brooklyn. He spent about his first 7 or 8 years in Brooklyn before his family moved to Baltimore. And the Nets were looking like a serious threat to trade for Carmelo. And Carmelo kind of, in wanting the Knicks to make a move for him, he kind of put it out there that, hey, if the Nets trade for me, I'm going to sign with them and play for them. So the Knicks really did not want that to happen. And at the time, Carmelo got all the hype. He was a perennial all-star. And someone like myself, I was very excited about it. I thought that they should make the move. LeBron did not come here, so it was like, forget LeBron, let's get Carmelo. LeBron did not want to come, let's get Carmelo, forget LeBron. Let's put Carmelo with Amari and let's go and let's go gun for the Heat. Let's take on the Heat and knock them off with Carmelo and Amari. So the All-Star break comes. During the All-Star break, news breaks that, okay, Carmelo Anthony and the Knicks agreed to this trade. Matter of fact, the Monday after the All-Star game was on a Sunday. Amari is playing so great that he gets voted to be a starter in that All-Star game. The game is in LA. Amari has about 30-plus points in the game. Amazing. And Amari, that was the first time a Knick had started in the All-Star game since about, I think, 1994. That was Patrick Ewing. So it had been almost 20 years since a New York Knick had started in an All-Star game. And so Amari not only starting, but scoring about 32 points in the game, I believe. He almost won the MVP of the game. I think LeBron might have won the MVP. But Amari came very, very close to winning the MVP. That was huge. And then the next day, on a Monday, The Knicks make the trade for Carmelo. It was very big, very big. And so then comes the first game after the All-Star break. Carmelo Anthony is a New York Knick. They're playing against the Milwaukee Bucks, and that that time was special. That was one of the special nights at Madison Square Garden. And I mentioned what it's like when you go in that building and there's a big game and how it's buzzing. That's how it was. And people forget that, in that trade, the Knicks also got Chauncey Billups, Mr. Big Shot, who had played for the Pistons for many years and won a championship there. And then, of course, he got traded when he was a Piston to Denver for Allen Iverson, and he was with Carmelo Anthony in Denver. And the only time Carmelo Anthony won a playoff series in Denver was with Chauncey Billups one year in 2009 when the Nuggets got to the Western Conference Finals where they played the Lakers, of course, and lost to Kobe and the Lakers in 6 games. That was Carmelo Anthony's only year where he got out of the first round in the playoffs. So in 7 years in Denver, Carmelo made the playoffs every year. He got beat in the first round every year except 2009 when they won 2 rounds and then got beat in the conference finals to the Lakers. And one thing I want to address also is the people who the Knicks traded for Carmelo, because this has been a big issue over the years that the Knicks gave up too much in the trade. Well, really, that's nonsense because all the Knicks gave up, they gave up 4 players, right? And this trade is looked at as, oh, the Knicks gave up too much for Carmelo. They gave up like half of the team. But really, they didn't. They gave up 4 guys, and I'll tell you who they were. One was Timofey Mozgov, a 7'2" or 3" Russian center who he was solid, but he wasn't anything big, all right? They gave up Raymond Felton, the point guard, who they ended up getting back a year and a half later. They gave up Wilson Chandler, who, since he got traded from the Knicks, the rest of his career, he was injury prone, hurt most of the time. And the fourth guy was Danilo Gallinari, who has had a solid NBA career, but never an all-star. He has had a lot of injuries as well. So Mozgov, Felton, Chandler, and Gallinari, 4 guys who, that's not a big deal that you're trading those 4 guys to get Carmelo Anthony, who now he's being built as this big superstar. So as you trade for a superstar, you got to give up something. And those 4 guys did not go on to do much in the NBA after that trade. So when people say that they gave up too much for Carmelo, that's nonsense, especially if the guy who you get is really the goods, which is what he was made out to be. Now, of course, like I said, at the time, I was all for the trade, excited about it. But as things played out, I ended up, as you know, if you know me, you know that I ended up thinking that Carmelo Anthony was very overrated and was not the player that he was cracked up and built up to be, okay? So we'll get to that in a minute. And also, the Knicks traded 1 first-round draft pick and like 2 second-round picks. So they did not give up that much to get Carmelo. So anyway, they get Carmelo, and this night, it's the first game of the post-All-Star break. They're playing the Bucks. Also on this night, which was special, is that it was Knicks Legends Night, where they brought back some Knicks legends from the past, right? And some of those guys, of course, were members from their last championship teams in the early 70s, the 1970 Knicks team and 1973 Knicks team. So I was able to speak with Dick Barnett, who was on both Knicks championship teams, and Earl the Pearl Monroe, who was on their last championship team of 1973. So I spoke with them. So you'll hear that. I'm about to play it. And in this report that I did from that night, we hear from Carmelo, Chauncey Billups, Amare, and a couple of other folks. Some of the audio is a little grainy, but you can hear it. Just stick with me, and I'll be back to discuss in a minute. All right, folks? Okay, here we go.
It's a celebration as Carmelo Anthony makes his long-awaited Knicks debut. It has been a whirlwind week in New York City, with the New York Knicks making a transcendent move by finally closing the deal to bring in superstar talent Carmelo Anthony. Anthony, who was born in Brooklyn and lived in the city until he was 8 years old before moving to Baltimore with his family, was given a raucous welcome at Madison Square Garden on Wednesday night as the Knicks organization played a video tribute welcoming Anthony back to his birthplace before he took to the court for his Knicks debut against the Milwaukee Bucks. The video was sweet, the atmosphere was electric, and the New York Knicks were back as a serious contender in the NBA's Eastern Conference for the first time in a decade. And also making the night special was that it was Knicks Legends Night, with some of the franchise's past heroes returning to the building. The Knicks got the win against a gutty Milwaukee team, 114-108. Carmelo finished with 27 points and 10 rebounds, and his teammate, point guard Chauncey Billups, who came over with Carmelo from Denver, finished the game with 21 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds in 33 minutes. This was Carmelo after the game.
It was great. The reaction was great. I felt great, man, and, I've never experienced anything like that before. Just running out, the fans going crazy, just that whole moment at the beginning of the game, and, to come in today, go straight from the press conference to the locker room, I got to get ready for a basketball game like this. It was a lot, but, at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered was a win.
Then Carmelo spoke about the previous 48 hours since the trade had been completed.
Hectic, a roller coaster. I'm just glad I got this game out of my system. These last 2 days has been crazy for me, working on no sleep. Just the excitement of this whole thing going down, and, to be able to come out and get this W tonight, that really meant a lot to me.
Amari Stoudemire finished the night with 19 points, and he is happy to have another legit superstar next to him to help fight for Eastern Conference supremacy.
That's what we wanted. We definitely wanted to try to build a team to compete for a title. And I think we're bringing in the pieces we did is definitely a great step toward that.
And Amari enjoyed Carmelo's debut.
It was great. It's definitely a great step in his career. Coming from Denver and now here in New York is I'm pretty sure he's very excited about that. And today I'm pretty sure was a busy day for him with the press conference and receiving his jersey and then playing the game and the crowd. But he played well, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get his rest tonight and get ready for a tough week.
Chauncey Billups.
It was a good day. It was a really good day. I'm excited about everything, of course. Being able to get out there. When you going through so much in the last couple of days that we've been through, just to get out there on the floor is good. That's our safe haven. That's where we can get out there and just kind of let everything else go in the world. And it was good to be able to do that, and for the fans to embrace me and embrace, of course, embrace Mel like they did. Just felt good.
Prior to the trade, Billups, who was raised in Denver, Colorado, suggested that he did not want to be traded anywhere and would consider retirement if he was. Well, let's get confirmation now from Chauncey.
No, I'm not disappointed at all about being a Knick. Actually, I'm excited. I respect this franchise from afar. I played in the East for so many years, and even though they weren't the greatest team, it was always exciting to come here and play. My feelings about Denver and that whole situation was more principle than anything. It wasn't just about being a Nugget or just being at home. My family's there. Of course, I'm from there. It's not easy to get that call, that trade call, and you got to go home and face your 3 kids, tell them daddy's leaving, So it was more about the principle, it was more about all of that than anything. As far as the Knicks go, I'm excited to be a Knick.
Another guy who came over from Denver in the Carmelo trade is longtime veteran guard Anthony Carter, who began his career as an enemy with the Miami Heat at the end of the 1990s when the Knicks and Heat waged fierce battles. We asked Carter about Carmelo's game.
He can do it all. He can dribble. He can take people off the dribble. He got the mid-range. He got the 3. He can rebound. And when you can do all that, it's just hard to stop somebody like that. You can't just take away something, but he got other things in his back pocket that he can bring out and just be the same effective as he was, doing everything else. So he just got everything. I ain't never seen an all-around player show. I don't forgot since because his mid-range game is crazy and he can do everything. And I've never seen it, so I'm just telling the truth.
Okay. All right, my last one for you, Jess. Now there's a lot of excitement about this team competing. So Jess, with the other elite teams in the Eastern Conference, Miami, Boston, Chicago, Orlando, how do you think you guys size up against the competition?
I think we size up really well. As long as we get on the same page on the defensive end, the offense is going to come. Defense is what wins championship. And offense, you can beat teams, but you got to start with the defensive stuff. And I think me, Chauncey, and, Stack, he can block shots. And I don't know too much about, the other guys. Everybody just got to get on the same page. We get that defense right, the rest of it take care of itself.
We also spoke with Knick role player Sean Williams, who was happy to still be with the team and looking forward to big things.
Glad it's over, just to get the distraction away from, the organization. Now we can get back playing, getting acquainted as a team and playing ball. I feel like we got a great couple players in the trade. I feel like it's going to be great for the team and the organization and the city. It's great for our fans. I feel like New York fans, nobody don't deserve. They deserve to have, superstars on the court. So, it's just, it's a surreal feeling, but it's real. And I'm just trying to, taking every minute in as it comes.
Right, Sean. So just how tough do you think it was for the team the last few weeks? Just hearing the constant trade rumors, guys hearing the names in the rumors, guys not sure if they're going to be here or not. How did that affect you guys, do you think?
I didn't been traded, so it really didn't affect me a lot. But like a lot of players a couple people haven't been traded before, or so it kind of affected them. But just doing trade time in the NBA every year, everything get on ice, because being, for a player like Carmelo, it's nobody safe, but Stoudemire. So just to be realistic. So, it kind of everybody be on edge, but, since it's over, I feel like everybody can take a breath, and we can, start getting acquainted with each other and, learning each other more at practice and get this thing rolling.
The team has been strong all year. Now you got Carmelo, so you're even stronger, and you're still here. So just how excited are you about the rest of the season and still being on this team?
I'm very excited, just to be able to play with a championship point guard and two, top 10 superstars, top 5 superstars in this league. I'm ecstatic about the chance. I never, coming from where I came from last year, not even being around NBA basketball, but on contract, and to, dressing and playing on the side of Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire and Chauncey Billups, it's just a blessing. I feel like I'm ecstatic. I feel like all I need to do is do what I've been doing, make open shots, rebound, and do all the extra little things, because I feel like we got enough scoring with Stat and, Carmelo.
Okay, last one for you. When you talk to Knick fans, their number one problem with this team is defense. Fans say that you guys don't play any defense, right? So, Jess, you play great defense. You've been on some of the best scorers in the league this year. LeBron James comes to mind. When you guys beat them, you shut them down in the second half. So, Jess, what is this team's defensive philosophy, and how do you guys approach defense?
Well, we got different players now, so it might be a different defense philosophy. We don't know yet. We haven't had the time to practice. We just went through a 30-minute walkthrough, but nothing was on defense. So I feel like Coach is going to, switch some things up because, you got to coach to the caliber players you have. So it could be interesting on the defensive end, but I feel like everything should pick up, the defense and the offense. So we just got to wait to see.
Here's Chauncey.
We got a lot of things that we probably need to get better on as a whole, period. Defensively is definitely one of them. I don't think you can be an NBA champion without being a solid defensive team. I don't know if you have to be the best defensive team in the league, but you got to have some principles and some concepts that you can go to and be able to get stops for 3 or 4 minutes at a time. I think with the personnel that we have and the athletes that we have, we can probably do that, but it's just not that easy to just say it and go do it. It takes work. It takes knowing each other. There's different capabilities out there. It's not that easy, but at the same time, when you got great players, guys that are willing to do it, you can make that development fast.
Amari has similar sentiments.
We got to get better defensively. That's the first priority. Offensively, we're very talented, and once we get our spacing down and get these plays down, and get our flow, the offensive flow going, then it's going to be that much better.
Carmelo Anthony's Knicks debut was also the same night that the Knicks organization honors some of the past legends, as the night was Legends Night, and we had the chance to speak with Dick Barnett, who was on both Knicks championship teams in 1969-70 and 1972-73, the only Knicks championships in team history.
Well, it's always a pleasure being remembered and understanding that you had an impact on the Knicks franchise over the years, and hopefully the team that's being constructed today will carry on in that tradition.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like winning in New York City? Because, I wasn't alive when you guys won a championship, and so it's been about 37 years now, and everybody talks about how special it is to win in New York, and everybody says this is a basketball city, a hoop city. So just how special was it when you guys won those two championships?
Well, it was a fantastic aura. I mean, you can see just by the way fans have reacted to that trade. If this team can bring another championship to New York City, that would be tremendous. New York has been in the doldrums such a long period of time.
Earl the Pearl Monroe was not on the 1970 Knicks championship team, but he was there when the Knicks won the 1973 NBA championship, the last in team history.
When we won here, it was just electric, so electric that people still talk about it. And, it made us, almost heroes in the city. And I think that, if this team here in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, were to win a championship, they would be exactly the same thing. When we won, it was such a great time. The Vietnam War was just ending. The economy was turning around, so it was just overall joy, that was going on in the city. Aside from the fact that all the stars and celebrities, that were out there, and that was like the beginning of all that. Today, you've got the stars, you see them everywhere and whatnot, but this is a new era. Everything is new. The arena will be fixed up as well. They have a winning team, and I can't wait for the next couple of years.
Right. Okay. Now, Carmelo Anthony and Mark Stoudemire. Of course, when you came, everybody knows about your great partnership in the backcourt with Walt Clyde Frazier. And when you came, people said that they weren't sure you guys could play together. Now, I hear some people say that Carmelo and Amari can't play together. Just your thoughts on that statement.
Well, probably those people who say that they can't play together are probably reporters. If you play basketball and you understand the game, there's no reason why anybody can't play together. Especially the kind of game that they're playing, here with this system. This system is up and down the floor. If you're playing half-court ball, it's a little bit different. But when you're trying to get up and down the floor and get up shots, it makes it a lot easier for the transformation from like one team to another team.
Dick Barnett, how much do you enjoy watching today's game?
No, I enjoyed it. You've got some fantastic athletes, and I spend a great deal of time speaking to athletes about athletics and education, and really focusing on the future once this time expires.
As you watch Carmelo over the years, just your thoughts on Carmelo, his game, and what he could bring to the Knicks team.
Well, a tremendous offensive force, and I see that being his great attribute for the team. And, this is just one piece in the puzzle. They've got to put some other pieces together.
Earl the Pearl.
Oh, well, I think he's, obviously an excellent player. He'll make other guys, better players and whatnot, because he'll demand a lot of attention. He's a good shooter. He can pass the ball as well, and he defends. And, he's setting his mind on being a better defender even now that he's here. And, hey, he's got the total package. I'm just looking for great things.
Tonight you're here, and it's a big night for the Knicks organization with Carmelo coming, and Legends Night, you being honored. So just talk about how you felt just going out there and just the atmosphere in the building tonight.
Well, one of the things I told John Starks earlier is that you could talk about being in the Garden, and you can tell how electric it is, but until you experience it, you really, nobody can really understand how it is. When I walk out there, I always feel like I'm starting to play again, and I feel that electricity come through, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
And finally, one of the interesting sidebars to Carmelo Anthony becoming a Knick is which number would he wear? Of course, his entire career in the NBA and in college, Carmelo has worn number 15. Number 15 has been retired twice by the Knicks, once for Dick McGuire, and once again for Earl the Pearl Monroe. Carmelo Anthony, his whole career, he wore number 15, the same number you wore when you played. Now, of course, the number has been retired twice. Did Carmelo ask you if he could wear 15, or did you tell him that he could? And if he did ask you, would you let him wear number 15?
Well, no one asked me anything per se. I'm just getting here and just doing it, so I had nothing to do with any of that. As I told him on the podium today, he could wear it. I mean, it doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, my 15 is up there. It doesn't make it. If you're doing work, it doesn't matter. 15 is just the number. You make the number. The number doesn't make you.
Okay, one of the great all-time Knicks, Earl the Pearl Monroe, Philadelphia's finest. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
And the number that Carmelo will wear in a Knicks uniform is number 7. And after his Knicks debut on Wednesday night, Carmelo spoke about the matter with a group of reporters.
Well, 15 is retired. 22 is retired. I wish I could take it back down. I'm talking to Earl now, man. I don't know what I got to go through to get it. I'll wear it in his honor. I want to honor him and wear that number. But it's my son's birthday. First of all, March 7th. That's my son's birthday. 22 is my high school number. 15 was my NBA number. 22 minus 15 is 7. So it's a.
Did you think at all about 30, Bernard's number?
I thought about it. That number's too big for me, man. It's. It was cool for Bernard back then. Right now, 7. 7 is a great number. I don't see why not.
And this is Samori Benjamin.
All right, and that was 10 years ago tonight, Carmelo Anthony's Knicks debut. There was so much optimism, and playing that night all throughout the Garden, there was a very popular song at the time called Black and Yellow, and this was a song made for Carmelo and Amari on Carmelo Anthony's debut.
It's your boy Judge. I want to welcome y'all to New York, the Mecca of basketball. Big Stat, let's get it. You know what it is. Everything we do it big. Miami Heat, that's nothing. Carmelo with the shot, it's that done. Come up in the town, you see it, you know everything. Statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow. Knicks put it down in the Garden, baby, ballin', homie. Statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow. We in New York, it's game day. Opponents scared of it, but these fans ain't. Soon as we hit the court and show that game face, stat dunking, make the rim shake, taking big shots. We don't stop scoring. Got the best fans, you can hear the crowd roaring. Fast break, dish it out to Mellow. Now this the NBA, we ballin' out on every level. It's getting hot, it ain't nothing else that I can tell you. Gotta bring the win home. Who next on the schedule? No love for 'em, we keep getting it. New York Knicks, the new beginning. You know what it is. Everything we do it big. Miami Heat, that's nothing. Carmelo with the shot, it's that done. Come up in the town, you see it, you know everything. Statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow. Knicks put it down in the Garden, baby, ballin', homie. Statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow, statin' Mellow. Got a call from the homie, said it's something.
Okay, so Stat and Mellow, that was the Knicks' big two at the time. There was so much hope, and we heard from two Knicks champions from their last championship teams of the early 1970s. Dick Barnett and Earl the Pearl Monroe, they were both in the building that night. They were being honored, and it's always great talking with those guys because they are the only Knicks champions in franchise history, and one of the big disappointments about last season being shut down early because of COVID was last year, of course, was 2020, and the Knicks were planning to honor the first Knicks championship team of 1970. last year was the 50-year anniversary, and I was looking forward to being there that night and talking with those guys and doing some great interviews. But a week, about 3 or 4 days before that was to happen, the NBA season was halted, and so that was disappointing. Those guys were not able to be honored that night, and of course we hear Mr. Barnett and Monroe talking that night 10 years ago today, and there was optimism that the Knicks would have a championship by now, and of course they do not. Amari and Carmelo were not able to bring a championship to the Knicks together, and now we're going to get to it because you know that I have my issues with Carmelo Anthony as a player, and I'm going to tell you all why. And this is a subject that I've been through a lot of arguments with a lot of Knicks fans, and not just Knicks fans, but basketball fans, period, because Carmelo Anthony is highly respected by basketball fans. Okay, not just Knicks fans, but basketball fans. Most of them think that he is one of the all-time greats. He should be in the Hall of Fame, and they think he is a superstar, and yeah, one of the best players that you would ever see. And I think that is ridiculous because the Knicks with Carmelo Anthony, when I saw him, first of all, before he got to the Knicks, as I mentioned, in 7 years with Denver, he made the playoffs every year. But in the NBA, making the playoffs is not that big of a deal because there are 30 NBA teams, 16 teams make the playoffs, 14 teams don't. So more teams make the playoffs than don't make the playoffs. And that is not the case in football or baseball. A lot fewer teams make the playoffs in Major League Baseball and the NFL. So in those two leagues, making the playoffs, you really are a top team. In the NBA, you could be a mediocre team and get the 7th or 8th playoff spot, right? So in Denver, before Carmelo got to the Knicks, he made the playoffs every year, and in 7 years, only 1 year did he get out of the first round. That was in 2009, which I mentioned. Okay, fine. So now he's with the Knicks, and in 7 seasons that Carmelo was with the Knicks, I'm going to tell you right now, folks, in 7 seasons, or we could say 6.5, because his first season, he came at the trade deadline, so that was only half a season. In only 6.5 seasons, Carmelo only really made an impact on winning in 1 season, all right? 1 season out of his 6.5, 7 that he was here, okay? So the Knicks win their first game with Carmelo against the Bucks, right? And then in Knicks fashion, the next game they play Cleveland, and this is Cleveland the year after LeBron James leaves Cleveland, right? So that very next year, Cleveland is terrible. That season, they have a streak where they lost like 27 straight games, okay? So they were terrible that season, terrible. And after beating Milwaukee in their first game with Carmelo at the Garden, the Knicks go to Cleveland in Game 2 of the Carmelo era, and they lose to Cleveland, who was horrible that year. So that, off the bat, was, if not concerning, very disappointing, right? Then the third game, they go to Miami on a Sunday, big national televised game. The Knicks win that game. Great game. I believe, if I remember correctly, Amari got a key block at the end of the game. The Knicks won a very close game against Miami and LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And that was a huge win, huge win. So in Game 3 with Carmelo, you beat Miami and you feel like, okay, we can beat anybody. So that was a big win. And in fact, in the Knicks' first 9 games with Carmelo, they win 6 games and lose 3. So that's very good. But then right after that, the Knicks immediately go into a tailspin, and they lost 9 of their next 10 games. And it's one of those things where a big trade is made, and you're excited about it, and you're saying, okay, now the Knicks, they're already playing well for the first time in years this season. Have Amare and the role players around him. Amare is getting MVP chance. Amare was like number 2 in the league in scoring for a very long time that season before Carmelo came. And he was shooting at a very efficient clip. He was shooting over 50%. If you know Carmelo, he never shoots over 50% from the field. He was not an efficient scorer, which is one issue I have had with him. So the Knicks lose 9 of 10 games, and it's just like, okay, we're supposed to be getting better, a lot better by getting Carmelo, and we can't win a game. We losing 9 of 10 games, and so and it was right there during that streak where I felt like Carmelo was overrated, and my opinion never changed from that point on. And my biggest problem with Carmelo Anthony as a player is that he never has gone to the basket enough. He, about 85% of the time, he's shooting jump shots. And when you see the big time players in the NBA, when you need a big basket, they can put the ball on the floor and get to the hoop for either a layup, right, or get fouled and go to the free throw line shooting free throws. Okay, so when the game is on the line or when shots aren't falling, you have to be able to go to the basket and get a high percentage shot, right? And that's something that Carmelo Anthony, he really did not do a lot. And during this streak where they lost 9 of 10 games, I'm right there at all the home games watching this, and there were so many games where he would play well in the first half, put up some points in the first half, and then second half would come, third quarter, fourth quarter, he would barely score any points. He would get ice cold, and we have these fourth quarters where the game is on the line, they can win the game, and Carmelo is not doing anything. And he is ice cold, and he's shooting jump shot after jump shot after jump shot. And I'm saying to myself, go to the hole, go to the basket. Why does he keep shooting jump shots? I mean, you see the great players, okay? LeBron, of course, but Westbrook, Harden, Iverson, Dwayne Wade, you name them. The big-time players, the big-time scorers, they can get to the basket when they need to, okay? And Carmelo Anthony did not have that in his game. I mean, he would go to the basket every now and then, but he could not consistently go to the basket. And his main move was a mid-range jump shot, and I'm like, dude, you're not Larry Bird, you're not Chris Mullin, your jump shot is not wet like that. His jump shot was streaky, okay? But he was not a consistently good jump shooter, and that's his main go-to move, a jump shot. And I'm watching all these games where the game is on the line, Knicks have this losing streak, they need a win, and he's shooting jump shots in the fourth quarter, he's ice cold, he can't make a basket. And so I was thinking that, okay, he's not clutch, and why are you shooting jump shots all the time? Go to the basket. So I did not see that, and from that point on, I felt like he's overrated because Knicks are getting a big-time player, and they're supposed to be getting better, and they're going backwards. And also, when Carmelo came, like I said, Amare, before Carmelo was there, Amare was having this great season. He was number 2 in the NBA for a long time in scoring, shooting a high efficiency, a high percentage, not just scoring points. I mean, a lot of guys can score points, but it's if you're allowed to take a lot of shots, okay, you can score a lot of points. But how many shots do you make compared to how many you miss? And Carmelo's a guy for his whole career, especially with the Knicks, when I saw every game very close, where he would score a lot of points, but that was only because he was taking a lot of shots. And if you look at his numbers, most of the times he missed way more shots than he made. And again, you have some great scorers who have a shooting percentage that is not that high. It could even be in the low 40%, which is where Carmelo was a lot as a Knick. But even those guys, okay, could, when they needed a big basket, could put the ball on the floor and get to the hole and get a basket. All right. So even if you are shooting a percentage that is shaky, we know that in crunch time, okay, you're a great scorer. You can get to the basket and score. Carmelo Anthony really did not do that, and that was always my biggest issue with him as a player. So from his first month as a Knick, that's what I saw. And then, so they lose 9 of their first 10. Then they finish the year. They after that they won 6 straight, and then they go to the playoffs and they had a first round matchup against the Boston Celtics, and the Knicks got swept in that series. It was not all Carmelo's fault. Omari had a great game one, and Carmelo did not. Shot very poorly, and at the end of that game, the game was on the line, and Omari was amazing in that game. But then in the final seconds, Carmelo, who was like something like 5 for 21 in the game, something like that, he takes this deep three at the end instead of going to Omari, who had been on scoring buckets all game. Carmelo wants to play hero ball, and he takes this deep three. He misses. Knicks lose game one. And game two, before the game starts, in the layup line, Omari's back goes out. Chauncey Billups, the big-time point guard, he was a veteran. He was older then, but Knicks got him in that Carmelo trade too from Denver. In game one, he got hurt, and he did not play again in that series. So all of a sudden, before game two, Knicks have no Chauncey Billups, and Omari's back goes out. All right. To Carmelo's credit, in game two, he had a great game. He had about 42 points, shot very efficiently, but the Knicks lose that game at the end. And even though Carmelo had 42, in about the final minute or so, he did not score really. So even though he had a great game, he really didn't come through at the end. But okay, he still had a great game. All right, that's not his fault. Then they go home to the Garden, right? Their first playoff games at home in 7 years, and the whole team lays an egg. Carmelo shoots poorly. Omari's back is messed up, so he doesn't play that well. I mean, he tries to tough it out, but he does not play that well. And Carmelo played poorly in both games. Knicks get swept by Boston, okay? All right. You know what? The Knicks fans in game 4, when the tweet was official in the final seconds, the whole Garden crowd, they applauded the Knicks for, okay, giving the fans a good season for the first time in years. So Knicks fans were appreciative, and they were hopeful. Like, okay, this is just the beginning with Carmelo and Omari, okay, just getting started. And post-game, after the sweep, after game 4, Knicks head coach Mike D'Antoni, who we know that all these NBA players, these offensive players, love playing for him, love this system because his system is for offensive players. Like, never really have you heard an offensive player not like playing for D'Antoni in the system. And after the sweep, after game 4, D'Antoni, I remember him in the conference room talking to the media. He was glowing about Carmelo. He was talking about how he saw Carmelo as a triple-double guy for him, right? In the future, he saw him as a triple-double guy, a guy with the ball in his hands, and he had so many high hopes for Carmelo. And, of course, we've seen D'Antoni have Steve Nash, right? A real two-time MVP, real playmaker. We saw how Steve Nash thrived in D'Antoni's system and how his game went to the next level. James Harden in Houston. We see how James Harden, a truly great player, what James Harden was able to do playing for Mike D'Antoni in that system. I mean, James Harden was able to not only lead the league in scoring, but also, and people forget this, James Harden, his first year playing for Mike D'Antoni, James Harden led the NBA in assists, okay? People see Harden now in Brooklyn and see him getting all these assists, and they're like, oh, wow, look at James Harden. I never knew that he could pass like this, and look at how many assists he's getting. I mean, they forget that they don't even realize that Harden has led the NBA in assists before, okay? And with D'Antoni, he did that. I mean, he went off playing for D'Antoni, loved this system. And so here's D'Antoni after Knicks get swept in 2011, talking about how he sees Carmelo being great in his offense and being a triple-double guy. Of course, Carmelo I think now in 18 years in his career, has only had like one triple double in his whole career. So of course we know going forward from that point of the sweep in 2011, going forward that things did not work out. Okay, and the very next season, all right, I said that was a lockout year, so that season started late. Okay, and D'Antoni did not make it through that next season. All right, and I said that Carmelo Anthony in his 7 seasons with the Knicks only had an impact on winning one season, and it was not season two. Okay, season two, the Knicks going into it, they got rid of Chauncey Billups. Okay, they amnestied his contract. They used that money to sign Tyson Chandler, who had just won a championship with Dallas, and Tyson Chandler was, playing. He was the center. So now the Knicks have at center Tyson Chandler. They have power forward Amari Stoudemire and Carmelo at the small forward. The Knicks were being built up right by everybody as having the best front line in the NBA now, right? Going into the season. So there was so much hype and big expectation now that they're going to start this new season, the first season with Carmelo and Amari together from game one. They have the best quote unquote front line in the NBA. And the Knicks begin the season, losing a lot. Okay, they start off 8 wins, 15 losses. They, like so many seasons, the Knicks can't win a game. They're losing like every game, no matter who they're playing, they're losing. And then Carmelo ends up getting hurt, and Amari's brother passes away tragically. So both of them end up like leaving the team. And on the night before the Giants won Super Bowl 46, the Knicks played a home game against the Nets. They were still in Jersey at that point. That was their last season in Jersey. Okay, and Carmelo in that game got hurt, and the Knicks had just lost the previous night to Boston. They were losing all the time. Carmelo in this game gets hurt. Amari is already gone. His brother passed away, and in comes this point guard who most folks had never heard of before, Jeremy Lin. Okay, Jeremy Lin comes in off the bench, has this great game. The Knicks beat the Nets, and Linsanity was born. The Knicks with Jeremy Lin, they won like 7 straight games. I believe it was 7 straight. So they go from 8-15 to 500 during this time, and it was just amazing. That was an amazing time. Carmelo was out this whole time, right? Amari was out, I think, the entire time too, or he might have come back towards the tail end of this win streak with Lynn, but Carmelo was out the whole time. And the whole topic of conversation during this win streak, when Carmelo was out and Lynn was leading this team to this long win streak, saving their season, the whole conversation was, when Carmelo comes back, will the Knicks still keep winning? Okay, that was the whole topic of conversation. Will they keep winning when Carmelo comes back? Okay, and then there's all this talk in the media and debate about, because Carmelo has so many fans, and fans in the media, Knicks fans, and people like Stephen A. Smith are talking about, Carmelo, even though they're winning, they're like, Carmelo. He's like, Carmelo, when he comes back, the Knicks have to run the offense through Carmelo. He's the big star. He can't take a back seat to Jeremy Lin. Even though they're winning, and it's about winning, the whole thing is, no, Carmelo, like he's Mr. Superstar. Forget Jeremy Lin. Forget that. Carmelo cannot take a back seat. So, of course, Carmelo comes back. The Knicks start losing again. And it's crazy because Mike D'Antoni, before Lin came in, D'Antoni was on the hot seat and about to be fired. And then Lin comes in, Knicks go on this big winning streak. Lin saves D'Antoni's job. Then Carmelo comes back. Knicks start losing again every game. And then D'Antoni ends up, him and the Knicks end up parting ways. Whether it was a firing or he resigned, he was gone. He was gone when Carmelo came back. And there was all these stories about how Carmelo had issues with D'Antoni's system, and he wasn't trying to take a back seat to Jeremy Lin, all this nonsense. But Jeremy Lin saved that season, and then D'Antoni was gone. Mike Woodson came in, and to the Knicks' credit, uh, they ended up finishing that season with Mike Woodson winning 18 of 24 games. They won 18-6, and the team they had talent. Like I say so many times, the Knicks have had talent a lot over the years, but they underachieve a lot. And that was one season before Lynn came in, and right after Carmelo came back, they underachieved. Despite having talent, they were not winning very many games. So Mike Woodson, to his credit, he came in and he had nothing to lose. He was the interim head coach, so he wanted to. He had nothing to lose. He was trying to keep the job, so he broke his foot in people's behind, and the Knicks ended up going 18-6 over the final 24 games, and they really finished strong. Jeremy Lin actually got hurt about a month or so before the playoffs, so a lot of that 18-6, part of that was without Lin, and the Knicks played well. J.R. Smith, Shumpert, Amari, Carmelo, but then they get to the playoffs that year, first round. They play LeBron in the Heat, and after the first 3 games, they're down 3-0. I mean, the Knicks lose the first 2 games. Game 3, I remember it so well. Knicks had a chance to win Game 3 to make it a series. LeBron in the third quarter got into foul trouble. He had to sit on the bench for most of the third quarter, a lot of the early fourth quarter, and the Knicks had the opportunity right there to seize the moment, win that game, make it a series, and Carmelo was terrible in Game 3. He was terrible, all right? And the Knicks go down 3-0, okay? Series is over. They win Game 4, whoop-de-doo, okay? That's their first playoff win since 2000, okay? So here we are now, 2012, Knicks down 3-0, win Game 4. I mean, they're losing the series, okay? They salvage the game, and that's their first playoff win, their first playoff game that they won since 2000, right? And there are balloons being dropped from the garden ceiling. You know, let's celebrate. We finally won a playoff game in 12 years. And then Game 5, Knicks go down to Miami, and series is over. Okay, so now Carmelo's first 2 years, they lose in the first round. Carmelo does not play well in either playoff, okay? The next year, the Knicks, actually, they let Lynn go. He goes to Houston as a free agent. They bring back Raymond Felton, who they trade in the Carmelo trade. Knicks that year have their best year that they've had in this last 18-year stretch. The Knicks that year won 54 games. They had the number 2 seed in the East, so they got the second best record in the Eastern Conference. And they win their division for the first time since 1994, and their 54 wins are their most wins since the 97 season, right? So for them, a big season. They win a playoff series in the first round against Boston, okay? So they won their first playoff series since 2000, and that's still their only playoff series that they've won since 2000 was that year. But in the grand scheme of things, like I said when I first started, the 90s Knicks, the Patrick Ewing Knicks, they not only made the playoffs 9 straight seasons, okay, but they won at least one playoff series for 9 straight seasons, okay? The Knicks now have only won one playoff series since 2000, okay? And it was that year, 2012-13, okay? They beat Boston in the first round, and the next series, they have home court advantage. They're the favorites against the Indiana Pacers. Paul George, quote-unquote, known as Playoff P now, Paul George, a young Paul George, and the Knicks as the favorites with home court advantage. And the whole thing is the Knicks that season, they beat the Miami Heat and LeBron 3 out of 4 times. So people in New York are really thinking, okay, that we're going to play LeBron and the Heat in the conference finals, and the Knicks don't even make it there. They get upset, knocked off by Indiana. They end up falling down 3-1 after the first 4 games in that series, and they lose in 6 games, and that was very disappointing. And here's the thing, folks. I mentioned how when Carmelo first came in the league, how people were saying that he's going to really, it's going to be LeBron and Carmelo in the NBA Finals, East Coast versus West Coast, and they're going. And people were really building this up to be the new Larry Bird, Magic Johnson in the Finals, East versus West, and not only did that not happen, but now Carmelo was in the East, and Carmelo could not even challenge LeBron ever. His whole time in the East could not challenge LeBron once for Eastern Conference supremacy. I mean, not once, okay? So Carmelo comes into the league as this hyped up, big time player who should be picked first, Carmelo or LeBron. They're going to have this big rivalry. Now LeBron is in the East. I mean, now Carmelo is in the East with LeBron, and Carmelo can't even provide any resistance to LeBron in the East. I mean, never did the Knicks and Carmelo face LeBron in the conference finals. The Knicks only faced LeBron with Carmelo in the playoffs one time, and that was the spring of 2012 that I just mentioned, where they got beaten 5 games, okay? So now the next year, it's a really good year, 54 wins. They finally won a playoff series. Their only playoff series won since 2000, and they're supposed to face the Heat in the conference finals, and they disappoint. They get knocked off by Indiana. And then what made everything much worse was that from that point on, everything fell apart, okay? The Knicks had not been in the playoffs since, okay? That was 8 years ago now, okay? This year looks like they could finally make it back there, but after having this really good season for them, second best record in the Eastern Conference, 54 wins, win a playoff series, the very next season, and see now this is the very next season they fall off a cliff, okay? And what became evident about their 50, but it's very clear that, you know, he was not the biggest reason why they had the good year, because yeah, that year, 2013, he led the NBA in scoring, okay, barely over Kevin Durant, who had won the scoring title the previous 3 years. And if you look at Carmelo's totals from that season, he took on average about 3 or 4 more shots per game than Kevin Durant and everybody else, all right? So Carmelo really tried to win that scoring title, but he only won it because he really went out to win it and took way more shots than everybody else, okay? But if you look at that team, they had 4 leaders on that team: Jason Kidd, Rasheed Wallace, Kurt Thomas, and Marcus Camby. Those guys right there were the key to the Knicks' good season, because the Knicks, as I say, they always have talent, but they often underachieve, okay? Jason Kidd, we know he's one of the best point guards of all time. Jason Kidd's leadership held that team together, okay? His smarts, like Kidd is somebody who Carmelo Anthony, he respects, okay? The only other time, so I mentioned how Carmelo won a playoff series, right, that year with the Knicks. That was his only the second time that he got out of the first round, second and last time, and that was the last playoff series Carmelo won. So for Carmelo's career, he won just 3 playoff series in 18 seasons. I'll get back to that in a minute. But when he was in Denver, the one year when he got out of the first round, he had Chauncey Billups, a point guard who won a championship in Detroit, and somebody who Carmelo respected. When Chauncey spoke, Carmelo listened. Now, with the Knicks, 2013, they had Jason Kidd, right, starting in the lineup. When Kidd spoke, Carmelo listened, okay? And he was the brains of the team, okay? Had Rasheed Wallace on the team. We know Rasheed. He won a championship with Detroit too, okay? And he does not play around, okay? Rasheed speaks, you are respecting him, okay? Kurt Thomas and Marcus Camby, the other 2 guys, they were both Knicks the last time the Knicks really had a really good contending team in the late 90s, right? When they were in the finals, the teams I'm talking about that made the playoffs every year and won at least one playoff round for 9 straight seasons, okay? So it was those 2 guys with Rasheed and Kidd, okay? But that was all of their last season playing in the NBA. They were all at the end. They all broke down by the end of the season, and by the end of the season, they had nothing left, none of them, to the point where they all retired. I mean, Jason Kidd had 1 year left on his contract for about $10 or $11 million that he could have played them next year, but Jason Kidd that last season in the playoffs missed like his last 25, 27 shots. Okay, all right, he had nothing left, so he played so like he was done to the point where he was said, you know what, I'm not going to even take this $10 million, $11 million on his contract. I'm not going to even take your money, Knicks, because I had nothing left to give. Okay, so I'm not going to just take your money because I can't help you guys anymore. So he retired. They all retired. And the very next season, okay, with pretty much the same team, but with 4 guys added to the roster who could actually contribute on the court. So you would think the Knicks are going to improve from this, right? And now they have their best season in years. So Knicks have not won a championship since 1973. People are thinking, okay, maybe now Knicks could actually contend for a championship finally. So there's hope, big hope, and they end up not even making the playoffs next season, okay? With like the same roster. And that next season, from the jump, they were horrible, okay? In November, okay? That first month of the season in November, the Knicks lost every home game. How do you lose every home game in the first month of the season, okay? In November, they lost every home game. And they had a streak of 9 straight games overall where they lost, okay, in the first month of the season. And, I mean, so, like, stuff like that, and Carmelo Anthony, he did not play well. If you look at his shooting numbers, they were atrocious, okay? And now it was back to him being a leader again, okay? The 4 leaders leave. So, I mean, it became apparent that those old veterans, Kidd especially, but Kidd, Rashid, Kurt, and Camby being in the locker room, it was clear that is what held the team together. That's what created the chemistry for their good season in 2012-13. Now that next year, they can't even make the playoffs. And Carmelo Anthony is shooting atrociously, okay? He is not a leader, all right? And Knicks fans got upset when I said this, right? Because they love Carmelo. Basketball fans who were not even Knicks fans love Carmelo, but it's the truth, okay? And that was just the start of just a horrible streak of Knicks basketball, right? Horrible era of losing basketball led by Carmelo Anthony, all right? And so then things got so bad that Mike Woodson, after leading them to a 54-win season, that very next season, he gets fired, okay? Because the season was so disappointing that next year, not even making the playoffs, he gets fired end of the year, and the Knicks ended up hiring James Dolan, who Knicks fans love to hate. I've always said that James Dolan gets a bad rap because he is not on the court, okay? How are you going to blame the owner because the team falls apart on the court? Like, he's not a player, okay? Like, how's that his fault? No, it's the player's fault, starting with Carmelo Anthony, okay? The leader of the team who's getting paid all this money, who Knicks fans think is God's gift to the team, okay? So they bring in Phil Jackson, right, who was not only a championship head coach with Kobe and Michael Jordan and Shaq and all these guys, but he was a member of the Knicks' last 2 championship teams, and he really cared about bringing the Knicks back to respectability and back to great heights. It was Phil Jackson's dream to have the Knicks win a championship under his guidance, right, as the president of basketball operations. And at the time, it was a big move. It was exciting. And I remember guys like Stephen A. Smith, who was one of the biggest Carmelo Anthony apologists that you will ever see. At the time, he was saying that it was great that Phil Jackson was coming in and bringing in the triangle. And he said this. He said that Carmelo Anthony is one of the top 5 scorers in the modern era, which is complete nonsense, okay? I can name 30 basketball players who are better scorers than Carmelo Anthony. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Carmelo puts up points only because he has been allowed to take any and as many shots as he wants his whole career. everywhere he's been when he was in his prime with Denver and the Knicks. They were just happy to have him, and he could do whatever he wants. Like he ran the team, and no coach was telling him to, oh, Carmelo, you took a bad shot. Carmelo, shame on you. No, it was never that. Okay, it was always Carmelo's team. He did what he wanted to, and where much is given, much is expected, and Carmelo did not live up to that. Okay, you got to win. If you want to have all that given to you, you have to have an impact on winning. So Stephen A. also said that Carmelo could do everything offensively that Kobe Bryant can do. All right, he said this. He said at the time when he brought in Phil Jackson that Carmelo Anthony could do everything offensively that Kobe Bryant can do. Okay, and so they bring in Phil. Carmelo has a player option to opt out of his contract or play one more year and then be a free agent the next year, where the Knicks had all the salary cap space, whatever. I'm not going to even get into all that. But so Carmelo became a free agent, and Phil Jackson had a tough decision to make. Should I let Carmelo walk or should I re-sign him? And, we move forward with him and we bring in other good players to help him. Okay. So to make a long story short, all right, Phil Jackson, he's not getting any younger. He wants to win a championship. Knicks fans want to win a championship. The Knicks had just won 54 games with Carmelo. So you would think that the Knicks are closer to winning a championship with him than without him. So they re-signed him to a max contract, of course, which they had to. And all these Knicks fans and media members were saying, oh, you got to bring back Carmelo. He's a great player. Superstars don't grow on trees. So, of course, they bring him back. And my opinion is that Carmelo let down Phil Jackson, because here's Phil Jackson. He is a highly respected basketball person, of course, right? He's with Pippen and Jordan and Kobe and Shaq, had all these championships. He was a player on the only Knicks championships ever in team history. And so he's this great, wise man, highly respected, and he knows what real champions and what real big-time players are, okay, coaching Michael and Kobe and Shaq, right? So he puts his trust in Carmelo, which is what every other Knicks fan, all right, would have done, because all these Knicks fans love Carmelo Anthony, all of them, okay, to this day, in spite of him not really winning anything with the Knicks. And the media too, okay, all these media people, they all defend Carmelo. So, of course, like, Carmelo was brought back, and in the first year of the new contract that Carmelo had with the Knicks start off the season winning 5 of their first 41 games. So they start off 5-36, okay, which is a complete embarrassment. I mean, there's no way you can be a Hall of Famer and your team starts off 5-36, okay? I mean, there are just so many things wrong with that. And the team had talent, okay? Like, people want to make it out to be like, oh, Carmelo had no talent. I don't care if it's me and my 3 friends and Carmelo in the starting lineup. There's no way, if you are a Hall of Famer, if you are a big-time player, that you should win 5 of your first 41 games. And they actually started off that season 2-1. I remember the second game of the season. It was crazy because the Knicks lost their first game that year, right? Then in their second game, this was LeBron James' first game back in Cleveland after coming back from Miami. They did that. I thought they were going to have this really great season, because I thought that was going to be the impetus of them getting off, having this really good season. In the Knicks 2012-13 season, where they won 54 games, that season, in the first game of the year that year, they played LeBron and the Heat and won at home, and that ended up pushing them off to this great season. Okay, so I thought they were propelled from there onto a great season for them. So I thought that this now will be very similar. Okay, in the 2014-15 season, okay, follow me. They beat LeBron in the Cavaliers game 2. I think, okay, wow, they're going to have a really good season. In game number 3, they beat Charlotte at home. They're 2-1, and then They end up winning like three of the next like 40 games, and they are 5-36. Okay, and Carmelo Anthony is starting in the All Star game, which was crazy. And what bothered me about the whole Carmelo thing is that everyone in the organization took blame but him. And it was like the narrative from fans and media was always, oh, it's the owner's fault. Oh, it's Phil Jackson's fault. Oh, he has no help. His teammates all stink, right? So people would always say that I was bashing Carmelo, but they would have no problem bashing everybody else on the team, no problem bashing everybody else in the organization, all right? But they had a problem when you criticize Carmelo Anthony, right? So the Knicks, okay, after starting off 5-36, they end up having their worst season in team history, 17-65. Okay, the worst record in team history they had under Carmelo Anthony leading the way, and 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 and, and to me, like I said, to me, he let down Phil Jackson because Phil put his faith in him, right? And all that had to happen was the Knicks just had to have a decent season, okay? I mean, everybody knew that they were not going to have this great year, but mind you now, after this season, they had a lot of salary cap space where they were going to bring in some really good players to add with Carmelo. But of course, when you go 17-65, players are not going to want to come, okay? They're scared to come when your team is that bad. And also, what must be pointed out is that in that season, it was like you think this was just 2 years removed from them winning 54 games and having this really good season, okay, with a talented roster. Just 2 years removed now, all of a sudden, with much of the same roster, you start off 5-36, okay, and to the point where people were saying, oh, Carmelo has no help. So in the middle of that season, Knicks end up trading J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert to who? To LeBron James and Cleveland. So the narrative is Carmelo has no help, but LeBron James sends for two of Carmelo Anthony's supporting cast members, J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert, and those two guys, from that point on, for the next 4 seasons, helped LeBron play with LeBron in 4 NBA Finals. Okay, well, Shumpert 3, JR 4. They helped LeBron get to 4 finals and play in the finals. So so they're not good enough for Carmelo, but LeBron can take them and find them very useful players, and they are in the rotation, helping LeBron compete at a high level. So, I mean, come on. And then, of course, the next year, the Knicks have another bad year. And then after that, which was Carmelo Anthony's last season with the Knicks, they have a team where they have Kristaps Porzingis, because after their 17-65 season, the Knicks draft Porzingis very high. He ends up being a very big talent. And in the 2016-17 season, Carmelo's last season, they have Carmelo, Porzingis, and they signed Derrick Rose, who is with the Knicks now, who now people get excited about Derrick Rose. Well, this is 4 years earlier where he was better than he is now. He was the MVP of the league in 2011, and even though he had some injuries, he was still very explosive. And the Knicks that year, they got off to a pretty good start. They started off 16-13, and they were like the number 4 seed in the East around Christmas time, playing well. Not only did they have Derrick Rose at the point guard, but the backup was Brandon Jennings. Okay, so that is a very good starting and backup combination at point guard. They had Courtney Lee. They had Joakim Noah. They had a lot of solid role players with a solid best 3 players on the team. They started off pretty well, 16-13, 4th best record in the Eastern Conference, and then from December 22nd on, the Knicks don't win 2 straight games over the final 4 months of the season. Now, how is that possible? How can you be a big-time Hall of Fame player with talent with you on the team, and you can't win 2 straight games for the final 4 months of the season. I mean, that's all you have to say if you want to talk about whether or not he's the Hall of Famer. I mean, that's embarrassing, okay? That's embarrassing. And then finally, Carmelo was let go, Phil Jackson was fired, and we are where we are now, okay? And there's this whole debate whether or not Carmelo Anthony is a Hall of Famer. First of all, I just want to say this whole Carmelo Anthony thing. Now, like I said, I was there for the whole Carmelo era. I was there for every Knick home game that Carmelo Anthony played. Okay, I was there, and a couple of things is that I do want to say that he was a very cool guy. All right, he was easy to deal with from a media perspective, which I appreciated. All the media who was there covering the team appreciated because he could have been a jerk. All right, he was his big star. He could have been a jerk. There were players who were way less of a name, who were nowhere near on his level in that Knick locker room, who had attitudes, who could blow off certain reporters after a game when things were not going well. But Carmelo Anthony, to his credit, did not do that. I always say this, that Carmelo Anthony is the coolest star I've ever seen under pressure dealing with the media. Because with the Knicks, when you are losing and you have that media mob around you after every game, and when you're losing every game, it's like the world is coming to an end. The end of the world. Okay, I mean, that's how much pressure it is, and how much of a microscope these guys are under, and the fans are upset. The media is grilling you, and so after every game, after every disaster, Carmelo would come in there. He would take a while. He would take a long time, but he would always show up and talk to the media, and he would always be asked these tough questions, and he would always let these tough questions just roll off of his back with a smile. He would answer the questions very easily with a smile, and he was always very good about that, to the point where I feel like a lot of the media here in New York, they gave him a pass. They were not that critical of him because, to me, he was very clearly like one of the biggest problems with the team. And also, what bothered me is that everybody in the organization would take blame by the public, okay? The owner. I mean, we know people love blaming the owner, okay, for everything. And he's not on the court. He's paying Carmelo, millions of dollars to go out on the court and do one thing: execute and have an impact on winning basketball games. That's it. That seems pretty simple, okay? So why are you blaming the owner for? Phil Jackson, poor Phil Jackson, people dogged him. I mean, Phil Jackson got dogged by Stephen A. Smith, by all the media, by fans. People actually said, and the narrative was that Phil Jackson did not care about winning. He only came to the Knicks because he got paid a lot of money, so he only wanted to come to take a big check and put his feet up, and he didn't care at all about winning. I mean, that is what people actually believe, that he didn't care at all about winning, that all he came here for was to get paid. I mean, can you honestly believe that? I mean, Phil Jackson was ran out of here in shame. I mean, it was so bad for him that you have not seen him since, okay? He has gone, I mean, he was going to exile. He's been exiled over the Knicks experience, okay? Like many people have, okay? Isaiah Thomas, Larry Brown, okay? A lot of people came to the Knicks, things did not work out, and they were exiled, all right? And Phil Jackson, yeah, I mean, Phil, here he is in his 70s. He can't play for these guys, okay? He puts his trust in Carmelo Anthony. There's nothing that Phil Jackson, after his long, historic career, nothing more that Phil Jackson wanted to do to end his career than to bring the Knicks back to being champions again, or at least get them pretty close, respectable, and it is just a nightmare. And people really think and really said that he did not care about winning. All he came here for was to get paid a lot. I mean, that's the kind of nonsense that was being said, and all everybody wanted to say was, "Oh, poor Carmelo, he's this great player, but he has no help," and that just drove me crazy. Okay, and I've lost friends over this whole Carmelo Anthony thing. I mean, people love Carmelo Anthony so much and are so fanatical over Carmelo that when I was criticizing him throughout this time, people got so upset that it ended friendships. I kid you not. I mean, it ended a few friendships, not because on my end, but people were just so upset that they just stopped talking to me, and like friendships ended over Carmelo Anthony. Okay, and all the Knicks did with him was lose at a historic rate. Okay, and like I said, Carmelo Anthony, 7 seasons here in New York, he only had an impact on winning in one of those seasons. That was the 54-1 season. But of course, we know that he was not the biggest reason why they had that good season, because if he was, they would have won more. The biggest reason why they had that good season was because Jason Kidd, Rasheed Wallace, Kurt Thomas, and Marcus Camby, 4 guys who were not even giving a lot on the court, but they were respected leaders who Carmelo, number one, beginning with him, respected. And when they spoke, everybody listened, and they were able to have a lot of success and chemistry. And as soon as they all left and retired the next year, the Knicks fell apart and had not been heard from since until this season, where it appears like they are starting to turn things around. And really, my last point that I want to make about Carmelo is the whole scoring thing, because if you look at the all-time career scoring leaders, Carmelo Anthony is right now, where is he at? He's like 12 or 11 or something like that. Let me get this right. Carmelo Anthony right now is number 12 on the all-time career scoring list, right? And so because of that, people will say, "Oh, he's one of the best ever," right? But this is where I'm telling you, Carmelo Anthony's numbers have no substance at all, okay? His numbers have the least substance of any pro player I've ever seen in any sport, okay? And I've said before that he is the most overrated player in the history of the NBA, okay? So he right now has 26,823 career points, right? Now, if you look at every other player on this list, every other player, okay? Abdul-Jabbar, Karl Malone, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Dirk Nowitzki, Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal, Moses Malone, Elvin Hayes, Hakeem Olajuwon, Carmelo number 12, Oscar Robertson, who we just passed, Dominique Wilkins, Tim Duncan, Paul Pierce, John Havlicek, Kevin Garnett, Vince Carter, Alex English, Reggie Miller, Jerry West, Patrick Ewing, a real great Knick, okay? A real great Knick who really carried the team with not much around them but role players. But Ewing was so great that he had the Knicks a championship contender. They never won, but they were a contender every year because Ewing was really a great player, okay, that carried the team, which Carmelo never did, okay? All right. Ewing teams would never be a losing embarrassment how Carmelo's teams were. Ray Allen, Allen Iverson. What do all those guys have in common except for Carmelo Anthony? They all have had an impact on winning, okay? Again, I said, in 18 seasons, Carmelo Anthony has won a total of 3 playoff series, okay? Every other guy on this list has won way more than 3 playoff series, and none of these guys in their prime would dare be caught on a team that was as bad as the Knicks in terms of wins and losses. The Knicks, on paper, talent-wise, weren't bad, but when they took the court, they couldn't win a game. None of these guys would have their teams that bad, okay? But Carmelo's last 4 years with the Knicks, they were an embarrassment. They could not win a game. Like I said, even in 2 of his first 3 years, there were times when the Knicks, okay, were losing a lot with Carmelo Anthony, okay? So like I said, he only really had an impact on winning in 1 of those 7 seasons because his first year, they were already good before he got there. And when he came, he had this big, horrible losing streak his first half of season. The second year he was here, the Jeremy Lin year, they started off 8-15, and the season was going down the drain until Carmelo got hurt, and Jeremy Lin came in and saved the season. And give him credit, okay? Jeremy Lin in 2012 saved the Knicks season, okay? So, but Carmelo gets 3 playoff series wins in 18 years, folks. You have to win a total of 4 playoff series in 1 season to win a championship. So here the Knicks are, building around the guy who only won 3 playoff series in 18 years, and you got to win 4 in 1 year to win a championship. And I don't blame them. I blame the public, okay? The Knicks fans and the media who, if the Knicks had not brought Carmelo back when he became a free agent after his 4th season, if they had not brought him back and they were bad anyway, okay, Knicks would have been ripped by the fans and the media because the fans and the media would have said, oh, if you would have brought back Carmelo, you guys would have been a good team. But we know now with him in that first season with his new contract, they started off 5-36 and finished with the worst record in team history, okay? So when you see that he is number 12 on the all-time scoring list, it has no substance at all. He's only 12th all-time in scoring, again, because everywhere he's been, in Denver, in New York, his head coach let him shoot as much as he wanted to, but he had no impact on winning, okay? And he was not efficient. Look at his shooting percentages. He was not efficient. And his lack of winning shows. And like the final point is that basketball is a sport where if you're really a great player, out of all the sports, one player out of all the sports makes the biggest difference towards winning, okay? Because it's just 5 players per team, 10 players on the court. So if you're really great, you can dominate and carry a team and really put your team in a position where they're winning basketball games, okay? Not football and baseball where you can be a great player, but there's so much other stuff involved where you can be a great player and your team can still not win that many games, okay? But in basketball, look at all the great players, okay? Their teams are good, okay? They're not embarrassments where they can't win a game. But Carmelo Anthony on this top 25 all-time points scored list is the only guy who has only got out of the first round twice in his whole career. The only other guy on this list who has won just 3 playoff series like Carmelo has is Dominique. And Dominique at least got out of the first round 3 times, which Carmelo got out twice. And Dominique did not have as long of a prime as Carmelo Anthony. And also, Dominique's teams, even though he only won 3 playoff series, his teams were never an embarrassment the way the Knicks were with Carmelo Anthony. All right? Carmelo's last 4 years, the Knicks were not competitive, okay? Dominique was never on a team where they were non-competitive and they were started off 5-36 and had the worst record in team history. I mean, the Knicks, for as much as they have lost the last 18 years, okay, as we all know, the team with Carmelo Anthony was the worst of them all, okay? That's hard to believe, okay? I mean, last year's Knicks weren't as bad as Carmelo's Knicks in the 14-15 season, okay? So that's just some things to think about, all right? Thank you for taking your time to listen. This has been kind of longer than I thought it was going to go, but there was a lot to be said. And because, of course, it was 7 years that he was here, so I had to break it all down for you all. And thank you. And the Knicks, today actually, the Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, they, for the first time this season, there are fans that are going to be allowed into the game, so that will be cool. The Knicks If they win tonight, I believe they will be at 500, and they are playing Golden State and Steph Curry, who I've seen put up many a big performance against the Knicks, and so we'll see how that goes. And I will talk to you all soon. Thank you, and goodbye. And I will leave you all with the sounds of from the last time the Knicks were a big time championship contender. Good night.
We are the New York Knicks. 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 Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. We're back on track on the floor, scoring more. It's 94, and the Knicks are hardcore. And I'll tell you like this, we ain't never looked sharper. With Hubert, Bonner, Gray, and Harper, it's the Knicks, and we're back on pace. Everyone's gearing up for the championship race, and the fans are going crazy, and they're doing it for a reason. Cause 94 is the Knickerbocker season. You better believe the Knicks got all that it takes. We're shooting three-pointers, and we're running fast breaks, and if your defense makes a mistake, then bam! You ain't dunks in your face. This is a team you don't want to miss. We are New York. We are the New York Knicks. Go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say yo, busted, all you hear is a swish. Threes by Starks and dunks by Smith. And no rebounds, if that's the case, we put Oakley and Mace in your face. We draw charges and we set picks. We are New York. We are the New York Knicks. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go.